Welcome, my name is Scott Baker, and this tutorial is going to cover installing Raven, sfa-client, and Sface. This is the first in the series of a number of tutorials that will take you through installing and using these tools. So, as an important note, our website is at raven.cs.arizona.edu. You can go there to find more information about this tutorial. So these are the three tools we're going to install and configure. The first is called sfa-client. And it's a command line client and its associated libraries for managing Genie slices. So for example, you could create a slice, you could add nodes to a slice, you could add users to a slice. Sface is a graphical user interface front end for sfa-client. So it presents a nice PyQt interface that will let you point and click and do the actions that you would otherwise do using the command line. And finally, Raven is a provisioning service for Genie slices. Raven does several different things. One of them is to manage the packages that are deployed on your slices. So, for example, you can create an experiment, bundle it into an RPM, and cause it to be deployed and installed on all of your slices. It also controls experiment state, so you can easily stop and start an experiment and collect results. And it also performs monitoring tasks, so you can see the state of all of the nodes in your experiment. Let's move on and take a look at the Raven Wiki. So I'm going to start with the Raven Wiki, where you can find much useful information about Raven and pointers to some of the other tools as well. The address is up here. It's raven.cs.arizona.edu. Just type that in and it will take you to the appropriate place. And on this page you'll be able to find out lots of information about our project. These links here are basically text links, and there is a page that contains video tutorials, including this tutorial. So we're going to start here with the Getting Started page. Bringing up the Getting Started page, it will tell you how to install the various SFA utilities that you need, as well as Raven. I'm going to skip over the part on setting up Tempest and Stork on your target computer and move down to setting up Raven and its dependencies on your administrator machine. So the administrator machine is the machine that you're going to be using to control your experiment from. Typically this is your desktop machine or a home machine or a laptop or something, rather than a node out in the cloud. So what's important on this page, there's a couple of files here that we're going to want to be able to copy into your computer at a later time. One of them is this onelab.repo file. So you'll be prepared to cut and paste that at a certain time. There's also a raven.repo file down here where you'll be able to cut and paste that later. And then we also have a section of an sfi-config file that you'll be cutting and pasting into the appropriate place. So at this point we're going to switch over to a terminal window where I'm going to go through all of these steps interactively. We're going to need to be installing software, so the first thing we'll do is switch to the root user. You can use su or sudo, whichever you prefer. So as root, we will be able to install our yum packages. Let's have a look at the yum repositories. Those are stored in a directory called etc yum repos.d. There's two files that you need to create in here, one for OneLab and one for Raven. We have copies of these files on the wiki under the installation of Raven page that will show you the text to put in them. So I've already created them. Let's take a look at what's in them. So the OneLab one, it has a URL there to the OneLab repository. The important thing to know about that URL is it does change from time to time, since those are nightly builds. It's possible that by the time you're viewing this tutorial, the September 8th of 2011 build has already expired, in which case you would need to find a more recent build. Also in the URL is the Fedora version, so this happens to be Fedora 12, and the architecture, this happens to be for a 64-bit. The other one is the Raven repository. That's in raven.repo. And this URL fortunately does not change. It's always the same and will always have the most recent Raven packages. So once you've got those two files created, and again we have copies of that on the wiki for you to cut and paste in, it's time to actually install the packages. So we'll use yum And we want to install sfa-client, Sface, and Raven. sfa-client is the command line interface to SFA, and Sface is the graphical interface, and Raven is the Raven tools, which depend on both the graphical and the text, depending on whether you're using the command line Raven or the graphical Raven. So it's figured out all the packages it needs to install, so I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to pause here for a couple minutes while it installs all of this stuff. Okay, so the packages are installed. This concludes the stuff that we need to do as a root user, so we can exit back to a standard user, and we will begin to configure our user profile for the SFI tool. So for starters, we'll have to make a .sfi directory, which is off of our home directory, so it's home/.sfi. And we need to put a little config file in there. We have a snippet of this config file up on the wiki as well, which you can type in, but I'll go through some of it in detail here, as we do need to customize some of these sections to your particular environment. So the SFI authority represents, in a Planet Lab context, usually the university or institution that you're with. I'm with Arizona, which Planet Lab site is simply called Arizona. It's under PLC. So the authority hierarchical name is plc.arizona. If you have a different institution, yours will, of course, be different than that. And under the authority, there's also a username. So the username will always start with the authority prefix and then just have a username appended on the end. So my username is plc.arizona.smbaker. And SFA generates those from a combination of the site, again Arizona, and your email. So my email at Planet Lab happened to start with smbaker, so it munged them together and created that HRN. You may have to look up and see exactly what your HRN is. Next up are a couple of things that should be the same for everybody. That is the URL of the Planet Lab SFI registry. So it's at planetlab.org/12345. And the URL of the Planet Lab Slice Manager, which is at the same host and 12347. So once we have those values in, and once they're correct, we can save this. So we have SFI configured. The last remaining thing we need to actually make SFI work is we need our private key. In my case, my Planet Lab private key is the same as my SSH key. I've already taken the time to remove a passphrase from it. It's important for the Sface tool, in particular, that you don't have a passphrase associated with your private key, or it will try to prompt you for that while you're using the graphical user interface. So I will copy that key into the SFI directory. And the name of the key is important. In this case, it's smbaker.pkey. And we can see that that is the same as the little part here on my user HRN. It ends in .smbaker, so my key starts with smbaker. So now we can run a simple SFI command to show us whether SFI is working or not. So we will sfi.py show plc.arizona.smbaker. If this works, it should spit out the contents of my PLC registry record. So there you can see it did pull up my SFA record, and that is enough to prove to us that SFI is installed properly. We have the right URL specified in the config file. We have the right authority names. We have the right private key installed. So if for any reason this doesn't work for you, go back and look at your config file, or make sure that you put in the appropriate private key when you copied it over. You can also see that the Raven tool is installed just by typing Raven. So it is in fact there. We'll get into some more detailed use of Raven in a moment. This concludes this tutorial. Now that we've installed these tools, the next tutorial is going to put them into action, working on actual Genie slices. We encourage you to proceed to that next tutorial now.